What if I told you there is a root that healed more people than any plant in the ancient world? A root that calmed fevers, sealed wounds, rebuilt the gut, restored strength after famine, and kept entire civilizations alive through drought and disease. A root so potent that traditional healers once said it teaches the body to mend itself. For 4,000 years, it was the beating heart of ancient medicine. Then, in the span of a single century, we replaced it with pills, powders, and prescriptions. We forgot its name. We let it vanish. And yet, in remote valleys, in crumbled terraces, in the memory of elders who still whisper its stories, the root remains. It did not die. It hid, waiting for the world to need it again. This is the story of the healing root humanity abandoned right before modern illnesses rose. A root that might hold answers we are missing. Before we open this vault, if these stories matter to you, the simplest way to preserve this wisdom is to subscribe, hit the bell. The archive opens in the Kallawaya highlands of Bolivia, a landscape of cold winds, terraced hillsides, and ancient stonework built before the rise of the Inca. Here, in the ruins of pre-Columbian farming plots, archaeobotanists uncovered something unusual: dried, twisted roots, perfectly stored in woven reed baskets sealed with mud. They were dated to 2000 BCE. At first, researchers assumed they were ceremonial offerings. But microscopic analysis revealed something else: scars from tools used to scrape the skin of the root, the same technique used by healers today. This was not ritual. This was medicine. The root was yacon. Known to the Kallawaya healers as arapuca, the root that protects, yacon was once cultivated from Colombia to northern Argentina. Its history is older than quinoa, older than amaranth, older than the earliest Andean cities. It thrived where nothing else could, on steep, cold terraces carved from stone and irrigated by glacial melt. To those ancient farmers, yacon was not only food, it was a lifeline. And its secret lies in something modern science almost missed. Yacon contains a class of compounds called fructooligosaccharides, known as FOS, sugars the human body cannot digest. Instead, they feed the good bacteria in the gut, healing the internal microbiome. Today we call them prebiotics. But 4,000 years ago, Andean healers understood something deeper: that when the gut is healed, the body can repair itself. They used it for fevers, for infections, for recovering warriors, for children weakened by cold seasons, for elders losing strength, and especially for travelers crossing the high mountains, where altitude drained the body of energy. Spanish chroniclers arriving in the 1500s were astonished by the vitality of Andean communities. One wrote that the people of these mountains endure labor that would kill a mule. Many attributed it to coca, the sacred leaf, but Kallawaya healers recorded a different truth in their quipus. The healing root was the first medicine given, long before leaves or herbs. Yacon water restored hydration faster than plain water. Yacon pulp soothed stomach ailments. The scraped skin of the root was applied to wounds to prevent infection. And fermented yacon syrup stabilized blood sugar so effectively that chronic sweet blood sickness, what we now call type 2 diabetes, was virtually absent. For thousands of years, this root outperformed much of what modern medicine would later develop. But its story did not stay in the mountains. By 500 CE, Andean trade routes spread the root across the continent. It traveled west to the coastal Moche and north to the Kogi of the Sierra Nevada. It became so important that at Tiwanaku, the ancient capital by Lake Titicaca, priests carved the root into stone reliefs, not as food, but as a symbol of life. But powerful knowledge rarely survives empire. When the Incas rose, they absorbed the Kallawaya healers into a professional class of wandering doctors. These healers carried pouches of powdered yacon from village to village. They were known as Thaki Runa, the people of the path. The Inca emperors trusted them more than palace physicians. Then came the year 1533. Ships arrived bearing steel, hunger for gold, and invisible diseases that tore through the Andes. Smallpox and influenza consumed entire villages. In desperation, healers used everything they had, including quinine bark, coca leaves, and sacred plants we no longer recognize. But one detail is recorded in the few surviving chronicles. The root was used most of all. It relieved fevers. It restored appetite. It helped the sick breathe easier. But the conquerors saw no value in a root that could not be distilled into a profit, traded across oceans, or controlled. They dismissed it as native sugar. Fields were replaced with barley, wheat, and old world crops that demanded irrigation and broke easily under frost. Yacon, unable to compete with imposed monocultures, began to disappear. By 1700, it survived only in remote valleys where the empire had never reached. It became a plant of memory, eaten by elders, whispered about in healing chants, cultivated quietly, almost in defiance of the new order. By 1900, most of the world had no idea it existed. And yet, something strange happened. As industrialization spread, so did new diseases, metabolic disorders, chronic inflammation, digestive illnesses, fatigue syndromes. Diseases the ancient healers had managed with the very root we had abandoned. But the root was not gone. It had simply stepped out of our sight. In the 1980s, Japanese researchers studying indigenous plants in Peru stumbled upon a syrup sold in small clay jars at a village market. It was thick, amber-colored, sweet but not sugary. The seller told them it came from a root that gives strength to the sick. Intrigued, they analyzed it. What they found was astonishing. Yacon syrup lowered blood sugar instead of raising it. It improved insulin sensitivity. It fed beneficial gut bacteria. It reduced inflammation markers. It supported weight regulation. It contained compounds that slowed tumor cell growth. And it did all of this with no known toxicity. A natural medicine that modern science had been chasing for decades already existed, and had existed for thousands of years. Studies in the early 2000s confirmed what the Kallawaya healers already knew. Yacon improves digestion and rebuilds gut flora. Yacon reduces fasting glucose and A1C levels. Yacon supports liver function. Yacon is rich in antioxidants and essential minerals. Yacon decreases inflammation and oxidative stress. Yacon contains chlorogenic acid and prebiotic fibers used today in metabolic treatments. The modern medical world reacted with excitement, then confusion. Because unlike most medicinal plants, yacon is not rare. It is not fragile. It is not slow-growing. It is abundant. It grows easily in poor soil, needs little care, and thrives at altitudes where almost nothing survives. So why is it still nearly invisible? Because its greatest strength is also its greatest threat to industry. The root cannot be patented. Its healing compounds cannot be owned. Its benefits cannot be locked behind laboratory walls. It grows freely. It multiplies quickly. It spreads health without needing a brand, a factory, or a prescription. So once again, modern systems quietly pushed it aside. But the people who kept it alive did not stop. In a small village near Cochabamba, a woman named Dona Remedios continued to cultivate yacon on her family's terraced plot. She learned the practice from her grandmother, and that woman learned it from her grandmother, a lineage stretching back to the first villages of the Andes. During feast days, Dona Remedios set a bowl of sliced yacon on the table, not for flavor, but for protection. She would say, "When the gut is well, the body remembers how to live." She never wrote the phrase in a journal. She never published a study. But her words hold the same truth scientists would later discover in laboratories thousands of miles away. In 2005, researchers measuring gut bacteria in rural Andean populations found something remarkable. These communities had some of the most diverse, resilient microbiomes on Earth. Their diets were simple: potatoes, maize, legumes, but always, always the healing root. The difference in health outcomes was stark. Lower rates of diabetes, lower inflammation, lower obesity, lower gastrointestinal disorders, higher metabolic resilience. The root was still doing its work, quietly, faithfully, outside the spotlight of global medicine. Another turning point came in 2010, when climate change began altering rainfall patterns across the Andes. Crops that once thrived, quinoa, potatoes, maize, began struggling under drought and soil stress. But yacon grew undisturbed. Its deep roots held moisture. Its leaves protected the soil from erosion. Its resilience offered something more than medicine: food security. Today, with rising chronic illness, collapsing soil fertility, and gut disorders at an all-time high, the world has begun to circle back to the root it once ignored. In 2019, clinical trials confirmed that daily yacon syrup significantly improved metabolic markers in pre-diabetic adults. In 2021, new studies showed its prebiotics restored gut health after antibiotic treatments. In 2023, researchers found that yacon leaf extracts inhibited the growth of several cancer cell lines. But perhaps the most extraordinary discovery of all came from a genetic analysis published in 2024. Some compounds in yacon appear to activate dormant repair pathways in human cells, pathways linked to inflammation control, tissue healing, and immune modulation. In other words, the root supports the body not by acting against illness, but by reminding it how to heal. Exactly as the healers said. And yet, despite all this, the root has not become a global staple. It remains small-scale, mostly cultivated by indigenous farmers, community gardens, and a few health-conscious growers. There are no billion-dollar campaigns, no vast monocultures, no pharmaceutical giants behind it. Because yacon's value cannot be extracted, it can only be shared. The knowledge was never lost, only ignored. Today, Kallawaya healers still perform a ceremony each planting season. They kneel in the soil. They place a piece of the root beneath the earth. They whisper a simple phrase: Pachamama, teach us to live, not survive, live. The world is now facing the same question. Modern medicine excels at acute care, at surgery, at miracles of technology. But for chronic illnesses, such as metabolic disorders, inflammation, and gut dysfunction, it often treats symptoms, not origins. The root does the opposite. It begins at the beginning, at the gut, at the foundation of health. And perhaps that is why it lasted 4,000 years. Why it survived empire, disease, conquest, and erasure. Why elders preserved it even when outsiders forgot. It remembers what we forgot. That healing begins from within. That medicine can grow in the quietest terraces of the world. That sometimes the most powerful solutions are the ones we buried. This forgotten root outperformed modern medicine for 4,000 years. Not because it was magic, but because it worked with the body, not against it. And all it asks now is that we listen. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to NaturaVault and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve this wisdom. The next vault opens soon.